And 1 second, guys, we're starting. All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. This is Jeff with Fluent American. And as always, we are here today to target your pronunciation in American English. Now, as we go through today, our stream today, basically, I am looking through audio files that you have already sent me. If you have not sent me an audio file and you want to get your pronunciation checked, hello to Denny. Hello to people checking out on the Lang 8 stream. Okay. Hello to our Romanian friend. Denny's here. Everyone's good, 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 good. Okay. If you want to have your own pronunciation analyzed, great. I would love to take a look at it. What you'll need to do is you'll need to go to the YouTube stream. So youtube.com/fluentamerican. Once you are there, you can see a link in the, you can either look at the video description or you can also take a look at the chat box. But you'll see a link to a Google Doc. You can then use that Google Doc to submit your audio file, and I will listen to it and I will provide some corrections, feedback, suggestions, and things like that for how you're saying things. Of course, we are streaming on YouTube and Lang 8, so you may see my eyes wandering around. So I'm sorry if I'm not looking directly at you. Yeah, my goal is to get through as much as possible because I see some people have also been asking us some questions, which is great, and I want to try to answer those. There's also some questions that we missed last time that I'm going to try to address. But this sound that we're going to be looking at, especially today, is the R sound, primarily in this sentence, which you can see right here. I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely. That's a mouthful, right? I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely. How can we say this sentence in a way that sounds more natural in American English? Well, that's our job for today. So let's you're also going to see here, I put a link to a video that talks about R sounds. This is basically, it goes through 5 different types of R sounds in American English pronunciation. You can see that again on the YouTube stream. So if you struggle with R sounds, there's good reason. American R's are relatively unique compared to a lot of other languages, including British English. So take a look at that link because, again, it goes through 5 different R's to take a look at. Another thing, too, is after this stream ends, so we're going to be ending in about an hour and a half or so. After this stream ends, our next video is going to continue giving you some suggestions and big feedback on how to pronounce consonants. It's a premiere on YouTube, so I'll be there as well, and you can ask me questions as we're watching the video and things like that too. So it'll be great to see you after the live stream ends in our next video. But yes, we get this comment here that this sentence is a tongue twister, and it really is. So let's try to break the sentence down first, talk about what are some ways to make it sound natural, and then we'll go into how you guys are saying this sentence as well. Okay, so here's our sentence again. I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely. Okay, let's talk just about some basic R fundamentals. In most cases, when you're making an R sound, you want to make sure that the back of your tongue is high and that the front of your tongue is also high. You can also, though, make the R with the front of your tongue low. Although, what I would say, thank you to Luz for the follow, I appreciate that. What I would say, though, is that, for instance, for my R's, I'm almost always curling up the front of my tongue, personally. So that's how I make my R's, but it's not necessary. You can also do it with the front of your tongue down. I think the big thing that a lot of students miss with the R sound, though, isn't necessarily the mouth position. I think it's about the placement. And if you're not sure what placement is about where you're projecting the sound from the most when you're speaking. Every language has different placements. Okay, for instance, what I see with for instance, like Mandarin placement tends to be higher, maybe a lot towards the back of the mouth. Portuguese placement tends to be higher, but maybe a little bit lower part of your jaw. American English placement tends to be really low in the throat and also very relaxed. You're trying to get a lot of air through your throat. Okay, so even if your language has a more open mouth position than English, maybe your tongue's not blocking as much air, the reality is still that in American English, sounds are going to still have a lot more air because your throat's a lot less tense. So that's something we're always going to be paying attention to. By the way, if I sound a little bit different, I'm a little bit congested. It's allergies, and it's not doing it right now, but we actually had our first snow of the year, or I guess at least of the autumn. So that's happening as well. So my apologies for that. But yeah, like I was saying, I think that a lot of people for the R sounds, they're not necessarily messing up the placement. Hello to Arya on the Lang 8 stream. Hello to Candy as well. I think people are messing up the placement. What they're doing is they're tending to pronounce the R sound from really high, like almost around here. So like top of the throat, back of the mouth. And if you do that, if you're pronouncing R sounds from top of the throat, back of the mouth, you're going to get a lot of times like an type sound, or maybe even if your tongue's a little too low, you might get like an eh. Like for instance, a word like never, never. You might pronounce it never, never, or you might pronounce it like never, never. When in reality, the sound you really want is like never, never. Okay. We have a question here also about the word stress. Don't worry, we will talk about everything related to stress as well once we finish with the pronunciation. Okay. So as you're doing these R sounds, and there's a lot of them here, make sure that you're really projecting from low in your throat and relax. Again, the sound you're looking for is like er. So for instance, let's work backwards. So our very last word here in our sentence that we're analyzing is rarely. Rarely. Tends to be a little tricky for people to say. So my suggestion is to start off by just saying rare, rare, rare. And again, trying to keep that really low in the throat. So it's not rare, it's rare, rare. Back of the tongue is high, but placement's low. Okay, rare, rare. If once you get more comfortable with that, then I would attach the li. Rarely, rarely. Notice too that the first R is a little bit stronger than the second R. That is definitely true. Danny, I'm excited to hear your audio. I'm looking forward to it. If that's still a tricky word to say, like maybe you feel like you could say rare, but when you add the L, it just gets confusing. It turns into a mess, and that's certainly possible. What I would recommend is kind of a strategy that we've used many times before. Try to put a pause in between the sections of the word. So instead of saying rarely or like rarely, like rare, however you're saying rarely, say rare first, then pause a little bit and then add the li. It's like rarely. Then you can do that again, but shorten the pause a little bit. Rarely. Then keep doing that. Keep shortening the pause and repeating. It's like rarely, 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 rarely. Okay. It's like just a strategy for that. Okay. Oh, Rana's in the house. How was the test? Did you take the test or did it not happen? Let me know. So again, that's my suggestion for rarely. Okay. Okay. How about that next R word? Rather. Rather. First thing I want to focus on is that THER sound. There. Okay. And just a quick note about that TH. If you were taught to make the TH by putting your tongue in between your teeth, like rather, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But I think what you're going to find is that linking to other sounds is going to be difficult because your tongue's so low and so many other sounds are going to require you to go up or to go lower. So my recommendation is instead of, having your tongue in between your teeth for that TH, just very, very lightly press the tip of your tongue against your top front tooth. Just a little bit of contact. You don't need heavy contact. It's like the. You'll know you're making too much contact if you get like a t or a d. So it's not rather or rather. It's rather. Air should always be moving through. Don't block the air. Okay. The other thing that you want to watch out for rather is that ah sound. Okay, it's like ah, like in cat or bath. Ah, ah. And notice you can see my mouth. Bah, ah, ah. Look how much space my tongue is taking up. You can't even see into my throat, right? Ah, ah. All you see is my big fat tongue, especially the middle of my tongue. And that's a good thing. Okay, so for the ah sound, you should not be able to see back into your throat. For the ah sound, the back of your tongue is down and the front of your tongue is down. So again, like ah, ah. Okay. Now that can be a little bit tricky trying to link the R to that because for the R, you want to raise the back of your tongue. It's like notice my mouth starts closed, and then it's going to open. Ra, ra, rather, rather, rather. My other suggestion for rather is to make sure that you hold the TH long enough. Don't rush that TH sound at the end. Okay. Rather. You want to make sure you have some control of your THs. A lot of my students they can make THs okay, but then I challenge them. I'm like, all right, so you can make your TH. Can you hold your TH for like 3 or 4 seconds? Like, can you do if as you're doing that, it turns to like red the like a lot of like starts and stops. That's a sign that maybe you're pressing too hard or it's not relaxed enough. Okay, so I would really suggest practicing your th sounds. Try to hold them a little longer. See if you can do like a instead of really try to make it smooth. Some quick hellos. Hello to Alhuni. Thanks for stopping by. And hello to Rod. Thanks for stopping by on the YouTube stream. Okay, I appreciate that. Great to see you, man. Hope your channel's doing well. Rod recently passed. He's probably well over it now. He relatively recently passed the 1,000 subscriber mark. So if you're looking for another English teacher to check out, I definitely recommend Rod. Hello to Anne. Thanks for stopping by again on the Lang 8 stream. Okay, so we talked about rather. We talked about regular. We talked about rarely. Let's just really quick, how about that? But I'd. One thing is that I really would recommend studying contractions if you're not using contractions in your own speech. So just make sure that you use contractions because native speakers use them all the time. It will make you immediately sound more natural. So instead of saying like I would, you'd want to say I'd rather. Also notice for but you want that schwa sound. But I'd rather go regularly. I'd rather go rarely. Okay. Anne asks, what is construction? Like the meaning of construction on the Lang 8 stream? Can you give me more context on that question? I appreciate that. Other quick things. Oh, wow. Congrats to Rana. Beasting on her test. That's great. Congratulations. That's wonderful. Always want to hear good news from people. Okay. But I'd rather go rarely. I keep jumping words. Okay. The R sound that you're probably all super curious, though, is this word with regularly. Regularly. How do you say regularly? Oh my gosh, this monster. Regularly. So for regularly, again, let's do a similar strategy that we used for rarely. See if you can just say regular first. That tends to be a little bit easier for people. Regular. Notice again that sound on that first syllable. Re. Back of your tongue high, middle and front of your tongue also relatively high. Your mouth can be more closed. So against re. It's not ra, it's re. So make sure you're practicing that. Re. Regular. That's also the stress. And that's really helpful for this word too, because if you know what the stressed syllable of a word is, the other syllables, they're important, but you don't have to be so perfect with the pronunciation. It's okay to make mistakes. So for instance, if you say regularly, that's okay. In all honesty, like in rapid speech and normal conversation, that's going to be okay because people will understand from context. Okay. But yeah, so what I would say for regularly, see if you can pronounce regular first, then pause and then add the li. So again, like regularly. Okay. And as you get faster with it, regularly. Sometimes speaking it fast, again, can actually make it sound more natural because, again, the stress syllable is that first syllable. So the other syllables you can say faster, and that's going to make it sound more natural. In all honesty, you don't need to have perfect pronunciation with every part of a word. It can actually make you sound less natural. And on the Lang 8 stream asks how to pronounce negligible. Well, that's how you do it. Negligible. So when you're saying negligible. 1 second. So our word here was negligible. Okay. Stress the first syllable. So that ne, that's the same sound actually that we saw regularly, right? It's like negli. Short I sound, negligible. After that, you're going to have some schwa sounds. J, j, b, b, dark L sound at the end. Negligible, negligible, negligible. Okay. I hope that helps. Let me know if you still have some confusion about that. Another question here too. Is there a dark L in regularly? Regular. I would personally make them both light L's. I would pronounce both those L's clearly because I think if you use dark L sounds, you're going to lose the backbone. If you don't have a light L, what's going to happen is you're going to get like regularly versus regularly. Those L's are really key in that word because those are the parts that really give your word shape. If you take those away, it turns in. It's like imagine your body if you didn't have a skeleton, like you would just be mush. It's kind of the same thing with regularly. You need it to keep the word in shape, in contact, in form. Okay. Whew. So again, we've gotten up to regularly. So the sentence we're working on again is regularly, but I'd rather go rarely. So our last part is I travel. I travel. Really notice also how I'm saying I travel. So instead of saying I travel, which is fine, there's nothing wrong if you say that. Absolutely nothing wrong with saying I travel. But what I would recommend is I would recommend reducing that I sound. So instead of saying like I'd probably just do I. Reduce it a little bit. I travel. Okay. Also note for travel, when you have like a T and an R, so when a T and an R, when those join together, it makes like a tr sound. Tr. This is, for instance, like in truck or true or trust. Okay. For this TR sound, it's almost like a CH with an R after it. It's like choose versus truce. Choose, truce. Just try to say that really quick. I'll put that in the chat on YouTube. Okay, so again, choose and truce. Choose, truce. Choose, truce. Not exactly the same sound, but very similar sounds. Okay, it's like, again, CH with an R after it. Okay, I think we've talked about all of the individual words. So now we can go back to our sentence and the full thing. I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely. So we had a question earlier about where would we put the stress? Where's the stress in this sentence? I'll give you guys a minute. What words do you think I should stress? Let's say if I want to stress, I'll give you 3. Can you tell me what 3 words do you think are stressed in this sentence? I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely. Where would you put the stresses there? Okay. This obviously has a big impact on the rhythm. And as always with stress, things you want to be mindful of. Stress is subjective. Okay, the places where I may put stress are different than the places where you may put stress, and that's okay. Even in listening exercises, if we're listening to someone talk, you may hear a person put stress on a different word than me in some situations, especially if the stress is a little bit weaker. And that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with having stress in different places. If I had to decide where in this sentence, though, I would put stress. So we had the idea that maybe all the words that start with R's for the stress certainly could be possible. I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely. And I actually think that, yeah, personally for me, that's where I would put the stress. I would put the stress on rarely. That would actually probably be my heaviest stress. I think my heaviest stress I would put on rarely. Rather would get a little bit of stress. Regularly would probably get the second most stress. I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely. I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely. And if you're watching this and you're like, stress? What's stress? Well, stress, like I'm like work, stress from work. Stress is it's the word that you're emphasizing in a sentence. Okay, so it's this is really key for English. English really relies on stress to determine the rhythm of how you talk. Okay, yeah, perfect. Ed glad to see you here. glad to see you here. Glad to see you here. All this R talk is messing with me. Stress is going to be really important because it's going to control your rhythm. It's going to control which words you're going to emphasize, which words are going to sound more natural, which words you're going to reduce. Okay. To stress a word, you're doing 2 things as always. In general, you want to raise the pitch a little bit higher, and you also want to hold that vowel a little bit longer. Okay. So again, I mentioned earlier that I think I would put the heaviest stress on rarely. So that would be the word I would expect to hold the longest. Rarely. Okay. but I'd rather go rarely. You can even hear the pitch there. I'd rather go goes down, rarely goes back up. Rather go, rarely. Okay. So those would be the places where I would personally put the stress. Really quick, is there other things that we want to talk about? Linking. I travel regularly, but I'd rather. So the major linking that you have here is probably on the but I'd. Notice that T on but is surrounded by vowels. You have that I after it. You have that U before it. So that T usually is going to become like a fast D type sound. So instead of saying but I'd or but I'd, very common to use a fast D sounds like but I'd. Okay, but I'd rather go rarely. All right, let's say the full sentence one more time, and then we will take a look at how you guys said it with the files that you sent me. And again, if you want to send me pronunciation, files, you certainly can. What you can do is, again, check out the YouTube stream, youtube.com/fluentamerican. If you look at the lesson, the video description, I've included a link to a Google Doc. In the Google Doc, you can send me your audio file, and there's instructions in the document if you're not sure how to do that. Okay. 101 Star Wars fan checking in again. I appreciate that. Are you feeling better still under weather? Better. Not 100%, but better. I was hoping that I'd be okay enough to do the live stream, and I am here, so I'm happy about that. All things in time. I think it's allergies, in all honesty. It's cold. Everything's dying. We got our first snow today. It's things are happening, you know. So yeah, linking with the but I. All right, without further ado, you guys are going to see me put on my headphones. I will need them because I need to hear your files. We have a decent number of files today. I'm going to try to get through everybody's, and I'm also going to try to answer everyone's questions and things like that. If you have questions that you would like to have me answer, you can either put them into the chat box or you can put them into the Google Doc, and I will see them in either location. All right, let me get my headphones. I will share my screen and audio, and we're going to have some fun. So I love hearing you guys. I'll share my audio. Okay, so here are the files that I have identified for us. I think I put them in reverse order, so let me try to switch that. All right, so as I listen to this, I'm going to be particularly paying attention to everything we just talked about. R sounds, linking, stresses, things like that, everything that stands out. After each audio file, I will check with the chat, just see if there's things coming in, questions coming in. So if you do have questions as I go through this, just be patient and I will be right there. Let's listen to our first file here.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Okay, I'm going to play out one more time. What do you think I'm going to say?
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Okay. I think that our R sounds, and this is kind of the danger of R's can very easily take over your words and even your sentences if you're not careful. And that's kind of what I'm hearing here.
I travel regularly.
So I would say working a little bit on regularly. My biggest suggestion would be try to get that L, the first L, to be a little stronger. Because again, that's going to give your word a little bit more backbone, a little bit more structure. So it doesn't turn into like regularly.
Travel regularly.
So I'm just make that a little stronger. Regularly.
But I'd rather go.
And so rather, more rather. Can you hear the difference between ra and ra? You can get the corners of your lips to be a little tenser. So sort of ra, more ra, tenser. Again, middle of your tongue also could be a little higher. Rather, I'd rather.
But I'd rather go rarely.
And then rarely, what I would suggest for how to say rarely, try to get that second R to be a little stronger. Rarely. Play it again.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
I think in terms of like stresses and things like that, the general movement I think is good. Hello, Khaled on the Lang 8 stream. Thanks for checking in. I'm doing well. Hope you are too. Um, I think the stresses are good. I think the linking's good. I think the overall rhythm is fine. I think the big thing again is just going to be those R sounds. Just play them one more time.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Also, for those R's, it sounds to me like the maybe it's a little bit tense and high, like versus Try and get that maybe just a little bit lower in terms of the placement and things like that. I think would be really helpful for those R's. But yeah, that's the major. Those are the major areas that I would take a closer look if I were you. Okay. Khaled, you were saying comfortable car. Is that for pronunciation? Did you want to talk about that a little bit? Okay. All right. Any questions about that? Got travel and rather. And what's the year? Tell me what that means. I may have just missed something. Okay. So that's our first file. Thank you as always for sending all these audio files. I cannot do this without you. So I really do appreciate your input. Yeah, I was just listening to that one more time. We have a question from the Lang 8 stream. So the question is comfortable. Comfortable. Let's talk really quick. This is a super great word to practice because a lot of people have struggle. A lot of people struggle with comfortable. The reason that people struggle with comfortable is because the pronunciation does not match the spelling. Say comfortable to yourself really quick. Say it maybe 2 or 3 times. And maybe not all of you, but I'm guessing that there is someone that is watching this right now. Then instead of saying comfortable, they said comfortable or something like that. Comfort, comfort. And the reality is, if you said comfort, you are already not really pronouncing this word correctly. Sorry, it's not comfort. It's comforter. It swaps there's like a fast D sound followed by an R. So it's like comforter, comforter. Don't pay attention to the spelling. Pay attention to the sound. Comforter, comforter. Once you get that done, you can then move on to the bull sound. Bull, bull. Comfortable, comfortable. So instead of comfortable, more comfortable. I hope you're comfortable. Okay. Colin, I hope that helps with your question there. Okay. Colin asks about British English. I'm not a British expert. I really don't want to comment on what works in British English and what doesn't. You don't want to hear me talking in British English. There's actually, if you really want to see that, I took a British English class. You can find our live stream on. That was an old stream a couple months ago. I learned some British English, which I have since forgotten because I have not practiced. Mad, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. Yeah, just like that, comfortable. I would even maybe put the on a separate syllable. Comfortable. For comfortable, what I would say, don't make the D too strong. I'm always a little hesitant to dispel it with like that D because I think it's a little bit too hard. It's not comfortable. It's comfortable. It's a little bit more of a fast D sound or a flat T because it's not quite as strong as a regular D. And I would probably hold it. It depends. So we have a question here. Saf, I see your questions on the Lang 8 stream. Give me a moment. I'll be right there. Ed asks, how you pronounce the D in I? It depends on what comes next. And I know that's a horrible answer, but it really is true. So for instance, like if you have like I'd go, well, then it's going to be a little bit more held. Okay. Because when you have a consonant before a consonant, you're usually going to hold it and not release till the next vowel. It's like I'd go. But if you had that D followed by a vowel sound, so for instance, like I'd audit, in that case, now you're going to take like a fast D sound, right? I'd audit. So it really depends on whatever comes next. Hello to Z. Zabeta's back in the house. Okay. We have some other questions on the Lang 8 stream, which is cool. Let's talk about, for instance, this first one here. They're asking about the word vegetable. Vegetable. We actually have a video. If you look up on our channel, if you look up dropped syllables or silent syllables, I forget the exact name. But we go through all of the most common words in English that have syllables that are not pronounced. Vegetable is one of them. So vegetable, typically what you're doing is you're not pronouncing the second E. So it's just going to be vegetable, vegetable. Okay. Notice that G is like a j, j, vegetable. Notice too, it's also ending on a dark L sound. So it's not bull, it's more bull, bull. Keep that front of your tongue down. Don't raise the front of your tongue, lower it. Another question 2. Again, from the Lang 8 stream, we have the word Mars, vegetable. I would just say I would attach that T onto the It's like vegetable. And again, it's almost more of a fast D sound than a normal T. It's not vegetable. It's more vegetable. Just a note. Question 2 on the word Mars. Mars. Again, R. Typically, if you have an ah sound before an R, just make sure you're holding that ah sound long enough before you get to the R. Okay. So it's not. Also, make sure that you do have an R sound. So it's not Maz. It's Mar. R. Just like the letter R. Mar. Mars. Notice that S will be slightly voiced, like Z, because the R is voiced. So that means if that R is voiced, that means that the S will be voiced as well. Mars. Mars. Okay. So Beta, I see your question. Give me 1 second. We have one other question. A lot of fast D sounds here. Give me 1 second. Okay. Check out these words on the language stream from college. So better, butter, bitter. All these words have in common the fast D linking with an R. So like der. Okay. Better, butter, bitter. Let's talk about the vowels here. So better, again, be. Be careful with B's that come before an S sound because, again, the S sound wants your mouth to be relatively closed. Okay. Whereas the B sound is going to make you want to pop because it's plosive. You want to do like a be, but control it. Don't go all crazy with that B. Keep your mouth more closed and then link it with the be, better, better. Butter, schwa sound. Everything's relaxed. You want to be careful not to pronounce this as butter. It's not butter, it's butter. How am I getting the difference? Well, I'm raising that mid back of my tongue higher. I'm also closing my mouth more. Okay. Buh. It's not ba, it's buh. Butter. Butter. And the last word here, bitter. You want to make sure you're not saying beater. It's bitter. Bitter. Okay, short I sound. Mid back of your tongue is high. Back of your tongue is down. Front of your tongue is down. Sides of your tongue touching your top teeth. And of course, your placement is low and relaxed in your throat. Bitter. Bitter. So again, not beater, it's bitter. Okay, so better, butter, bitter. Kyle, thanks so much for the acorn. Thanks for the gift. I appreciate that on the Lang 8 stream. Okay, I hope that is helpful. We have another question here in the YouTube stream. Ask some questions how to say inside, if, actually, adjective. What's with all these, like, all the letters? Is the capital letters? Are those the parts I'm supposed to focus on? Inside. So inside is going to have that S sound. It's going to stay voiceless. So it's not inside. It's inside. So just making sure you have some part of your tongue making contact with the top of your mouth. Okay. Inside. Notice too that D at the end is voiced. Okay, so it's not insight. It's inside. Our next one, if. So notice that my top tooth for the F sound, top tooth, makes contact right around here. Get to see my gum or my lip. So top tooth makes contact with your lower lip. No movement in your throat. Okay, it's not if, it's if. There should always be air moving through your lips. Okay, squeezing between your teeth and your lip. Okay, if. Also note the short I sound too. So it's not if, it's not e, it's more if. Next one, actually, This is a case where that CTU is going to make like that, again, a ch type sound. Actually. You may hear people pronounce the U. You may hear some people say actually. You may hear people saying that, especially if they're saying it slower. But a lot of people, it tends to get dropped. Most people don't pronounce that U. So instead of saying actually, it's more actually. And then adjective. Adjective. Good, good question for English teachers. If you're an English teacher out there, watch out for some things here if you're teaching grammar. Adjective. Because that A is the stress, it's going to maintain that A sound, like in cat. We talked about the A sound a little bit earlier. That J sound. When you have the letters D and J that join together, it's going to make like a J sound. J, J. So again, front of your tongue making contact with the top of your mouth, and your throat needs to vibrate. J, J. Okay, you can even hold the very tip of your tongue, the tip, down against the bottom of your mouth. Okay, just make contact with the middle of your tongue. It's like adj, adj. Okay, adjective. Also, that adjective. You want to watch out too for that CT when you're saying adjective, because you need the k sound and you need the T sound. But English has consonant clusters. I don't need to add a vowel sound between them. You know, it doesn't need to be adjective, cative. It's just adjective, adjective. Lastly, note that for adjective, that the V is voiced. Okay, so it should be a V sound. Adjective, adjective. Okay, so beta, I hope that helps with those words. One last question, then we'll move to our next audio file. Khalid asks about the word analysis. And how do you say analysis? Oh, anal, ow, ow. Back of my tongue's really high and front of my tongue is down for that ow sound. Anal, anal, anal. And then you get the lissis, lissis. So short I followed by short I. Lissis, lissis. Make sure again, short I. Sis, analysis. Okay. And Khaled, I hope that helped. I hope that helps with that question. Question I get more. I believe I did. I'm double checking. I forget what order it's in. Yes, I did get it. Anyway, I did get it. Okay. Speaking of that, okay, we haven't done audio files in a minute, so let's take a look at our next audio file. I will be sharing my screen and audio. If you have a question, feel free to put them in the comments. I will see it after we do this next file. Okay. And again, if you're following on Lang 8, you can hear what I hear and see what I see. If you go to youtube.com/fluentamerican, you will see our live stream. And that way you can hear the audio files and even submit your own file too. All right, let us share everything once more. Okay, our second audio file for today.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Okay, we'll play that again.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Okay, first thing that's really jumping out to me is final long I sounds. So for instance, words that end on an E. This is something that so many different language groups do. So please pay attention to this. Pay attention to how he says regularly and also rarely, the final sound.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
I hear a lot of like le, regularly, rarely, regularly, rarely, versus regularly, rarely. The long I sound in English, you want to be sure not to reduce it. There's a tendency for a lot of people to make it into a reduction, turn it into like an type sound, when in reality, again, the sound really needs to stay as that e. It's just kind of something to watch out for there. Regularly, rarely.
I travel regularly.
I travel regularly. I travel regularly.
I travel regularly.
Okay. We'll just that part one more time.
I travel regularly.
I feel like the A sound could be a little bit more reduced as well. Or not reduced. I think it could the placement could be a little bit lower and a little bit more relaxed, just slightly.
I travel regularly.
Also, it could also be regularly. So it's not regularly, it's regularly. Again, the placement's a little bit high on that re sound. So it's not regular, it's more regular. I travel regularly.
But I'd rather go rarely.
But I'd rather go.
Rather go rarely.
Rather go rarely.
But I'd rather go rarely.
But I'd rather go. I would probably put a little bit more stress on rather.
But I'd rather go rarely.
But I do think it's getting some stress, but I would hold it longer. You know, because again, it's changing the meaning of your sentence. You know, it's a pretty important word of your sentence. So I would hold that a little bit longer. But I'd rather go. but I'd rather go.
But I'd rather go rarely.
Also want to hear that THER on rather.
I'd rather go.
Rather go.
But I'd rather go.
I'm hearing rather go. Rather go. Rather go.
But I'd rather go.
Rather go. Again, I would hold the TH longer. I think the TH is a little bit rushed. It's almost turning into a fast D sound. You want to maintain that. My general suggestion for THs is to hold it long enough till you hear the specific TH sound, and then you can move on to your next part. If you don't quite hear the TH sound yet, then it's going to change, obviously, how the word sounds. So I would recommend holding that longer. It's like, for instance, rather. Okay, so I get that. So then as soon as I hear that, then I can move on to the rather. So instead of rather, more rather. Just a note on that.
But I'd rather go rarely.
Again, rarely. We've already talked about that long I at the end. Yeah, so those are my big suggestions for that sentence. I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely. I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely. Put a little bit more stress on that rather. Hello to Ella. Thanks for checking in. We're looking at pronunciation from files that other people have sent me. If you want to send your own pronunciation file, you could look at the YouTube stream at youtube.com/fluentamerican.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Yeah, and also paying attention again to those long I sounds at the end. So those would be my big suggestions for that audio file. Thanks as always for sending that file. I really do appreciate it. Can't do this without you. Just want to see if there's any questions and things like that in the stream that I missed. So Beta asks the question on the YouTube stream. What's the meaning of spinning the butter? Spinning the butter. Is it butter or is it bottle? I am very curious because I have never heard of the phrase spinning the butter. You can churn butter, to make butter. You have to churn it. I don't know. If you give me some more context on where you got that, Beta, because I'm very curious about that. Thank you. Hello to Silamed. Ahmed, thank you for joining us on the Lang 8 stream. Okay, while I'm waiting for some more context for Zobeda's question, let's jump to our next audio file. Okay, let me just turn this down. Volume's a little bit high on this one. Okay, and again, if you're following on the Lang 8 stream and you want to hear what I'm hearing and see what I'm seeing, you can go youtube.com/fluentamerican so you can hear what the audio files that I have been sent. But let's take a listen to this next one. Okay, let's take a listen. So Ahmed asks, what do? We are taking a look at pronunciation files that people like you have sent me, and we're analyzing them for their pronunciation to see what suggestions could we give for American English pronunciation. Here's our next file.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely. I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Okay, I think we have another case here where the R sounds are really taking over. And again, regularly and rarely, the L sounds are really going to be key to making sure that the R's don't just completely take over your word. Okay, they give your word so much more structure. Let's listen to the first part of this again.
I travel.
So part of this may just be because this is a tricky sentence to say. It's not the easiest sentence to say. So you're taking your time, you're being careful. But I think this also has implications, when you're out on the street talking to people. Hello to Mahad. What I would say is that when you're out on the streets talking to people and there's a word that that you have trouble pronouncing, this is the effect that it has. It makes your sentence choppier. It changes the stress. It changes the rhythm. And, you're so worried about pronouncing a word correctly that it actually makes the whole sentence more difficult to understand. So if there's a word that you have a hard time pronouncing in English, a lot of times it's better just to, do your best, but don't make it become a distraction. Don't make it that it starts slowing down your sentence or changes how you talk, because the reality is that's going to have a larger impact on your speech. And because now what you've done is you've changed the stress. Because now you've put a stress with you put the stress on travel, and it's not very likely that you would get the stress on travel in this situation.
I travel regularly.
And you've also now added a stress on the regularly too. So you've had like two thought groups now, and your sentence is very disjointed, and it's also very slow. It's slowing down your rhythm. So you're saying like I travel regularly versus I travel regularly. Okay, so it just kind of disrupts your rhythm a little bit. Okay, regularly. My suggestion again was to make the L a little stronger.
I travel regularly, but
Because I hear regularly, like I'm hearing regularly, but it's regularly, rarely. Again, you can break that up. Regularly. Make the L really strong. Okay. See the man says they have a problem with their pronunciation. This is going to be the great video for you. Moocat, yes, good to see you again. We are talking about the word regularly in this sentence. I travel regularly.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
And then, but I'd rather go rarely.
Travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Okay, so I would say rather go rarely. Rather, try to get that a sound a little stronger. I'd rather, more open. Ah, ra. Okay, it's not like when you're saying you have to have your mouth super wide, but I think it can be helpful as you're getting used to the sound to exaggerate it a bit. I'd rather go rarely.
Travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Yeah, because I'm hearing rarely, as opposed to rarely. And again, rarely, my suggestion, break it into small parts, add a pause, repeat it, shorten the pause. It's like rarely. Okay. So that would be my suggestion for saying rarely. So one more time on this sentence. I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Okay, so those would be my big suggestions for that one. Thank you as always for sending your audio. I do hope that's helpful. Let me know if you have other questions about that. Thank you so much. Okay, let's take, just want to check in with the stream, see if there's any questions that I have missed. Okay. So Beta, give me more context on your situation with the butter. I'm so curious. I want to know what it means to spin the butter. Does anyone have any ideas what it means to spin the butter? I just have no clue what that means. I've never heard of it before. Not say it doesn't exist. If anyone here is familiar with British English, any ideas? Our next audio file, and again, if you are on the Lang 8 stream and you want to hear, you can go to youtube.com/fluentamerican. By the way, guys, if you're finding this helpful, if you enjoy getting feedback on your pronunciation, knowing which words are not sounding quite clear, we have opportunities for that as well. So for instance, what you can see, let me try to go to my public page. On patreon.com/fluentamerican, we have a Telegram group. And what you can see on our Telegram group is that every single day you can get corrections on your pronunciation. I post a challenge, kind of like today. You have a sentence to read. I hear you read it, and I give you some thoughts. Some people in the group right now, or some people watching us right now, are actually in the group, and it seems like they're enjoying it. If they want to share their experience, they can. But yeah, I would definitely say if you want to get practice like this every day, check out our Patreon group on Telegram. You can see patreon.com/fluentamerican, and it's that middle option. All right, let's take a look at our next audio file.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Okay, I think this sounds very clear.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Okay. I think my big things are, again, final long I sounds. So words, again, they're ending on E. Notice, I'm going to play that again. Notice how they say regularly and also rarely. See what the difference is between mine. Regularly, rarely.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Because I feel it's almost like rarely versus rarely. See if we can get that more specific.
I travel regularly, but
Regularly versus regularly. Lee. I'll just try to make that a little stronger.
Regularly, but
Le versus Lee. So it's like le versus Lee. I'll get the middle of your tongue a little higher. Okay. Amuka asks, am I checking someone's pronunciation right now? Yes. You can hear the audio file I'm listening to if you go to youtube.com/Fluent American, and you'll be able to hear their audio. But if you just want to hear the feedback, hearing the feedback is also helpful, I think. So watch out for instance when you say regularly. It's not regularly, it's regularly.
I'd rather go rarely.
Again, rarely, more rarely, rarely. Again, lower pronunciation. I mean, lower placement for that as well. Okay, let's listen to the other part again.
I travel.
Travel. I travel.
I travel.
Travel. I think that's okay. You could probably get the ass sound just a little tenser there. Travel. Instead of travel, more travel.
I travel regularly.
Also regularly. Again, do you hear that? Regular, regular versus regular, regular. Try to get that back of your tongue a little bit higher. Block some of that air. Close your mouth a little bit more. Regular. So it's not regular. It's more regular. Okay.
Travel regularly,
So here, regular versus regular.
but I'd rather go
But I'd.
regularly. But I'd rather
But I'd rather. Do you hear that? But I'd rather. But I'd rather.
regularly. But I'd rather.
But I'd rather. Not much linking there, and it's also kind of very. It's every word sounds very independent. Whereas you really want these words to kind of connect a little bit more. So instead of but I'd rather, but it's more but I'd rather, but I'd rather. So notice again, but I'd, there's going to be some linking there. That T on but, it's going to come like a fast D sound. It's like but I'd, BRB. Okay, Mucat, we'll see you soon, hopefully. But I'd,
But I'd rather.
but I'd rather, but I'd rather. The other thing too, so you hear that I'd rather, listen to that part.
But I'd rather.
Do you hear that breath that escapes on the D? See if you can hear that.
But I'd rather.
But I'd rather. You know, English isn't going to like this because that's actually harder to say. It may feel more natural to you right now, but as you get more comfortable speaking in English, that's it slows you down. Every time you have that release of breath, you have to slow down. But I'd rather. What's usually going to happen though is that that D, because the next sound is an R, you're more likely to have kind of a held sound. So you're more likely to release that breath later instead of but I'd rather or but I'd rather. So it's like I'd rather. Just notice that linking there.
Go rarely.
And again, rare. I think the second R also could be a little stronger on rarely.
Go rarely.
Rarely, because I'm hearing rarely versus rarely.
Rather go rarely.
Yeah, the second R could just be a little bit stronger, rarely. And this is going to be really big for my friends who have British English training. Okay, if you have British English training, then you're probably familiar that R's before consonants are typically dropped or not really pronounced. For instance, a word like learn often comes like learn. Situations like that. But American English, R's are king. So we're going to keep all of our R sounds. So I'd make that R and rarely just a little stronger. Get a second R. In general, I like your rhythm. I think the sound is super clear. I would just pay attention to some of those linking things, some of those vowel things that we mentioned. But in general, I do like this.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Yeah, because everything just feels really tense. I travel regularly, but rather go rare versus I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely. Try and get that placement a lot lower, more open. Thank you as always for sending that audio file. I do appreciate it. Checking in with the stream, see if there's any questions for me. Okay. Here, Zubayda's given us. I left for this young man by spinning the butter. Wow. I am not familiar with that phrase. Yeah, I have no idea. I'm sorry, Z. I feel like I'm letting you down. I probably am. I'm sorry. Yeah, I have no idea what it means to spin the butter. If you guys have any ideas what it means to spin the butter, let me know. Because I would like to learn. I want to learn things. All right, let's take a look at our next audio file. Give me a second to share my audio and screen. Oh, we have a quick question here. Hello to Liliko on the language stream. Okay. Just want to answer this quick question from Ed. Ed asks, can natives tell if a D is held or dropped? Yeah, for sure. A held sound is not the same as a drop sound. To give you an example, I'm trying to think of a good example. And so if a D is held or dropped. I'd rather versus I rather. Okay, we can use that. Yeah. Thanks for providing an example. So I'd rather versus I rather. Can you hear a difference? Let's start with that. Can you hear a difference between I'd rather and I rather? I'd versus I. The reason that you can is because two things are happening. One, you're not releasing the breath. Okay. So when you hold a sound, you're not releasing. So for instance, when you say like I rather, okay, it's like I no. It's so much more relaxed, right? Like I rather. This is for the second one, just I space rather. I rather. Okay, the vowel's given a lot more time to breathe. Versus I'd rather. You're doing two things. One, you're not releasing the breath after the D. Okay, so you're not releasing the breath. The second thing is that typically when you have a held sound, it doesn't just affect the consonant, it also affects the vowel, because when you have a held sound, the vowel sound typically gets a little bit shorter. So for instance, I'd is different than I. Can you hear a difference between I'd and I? I'd, I. Okay. It's a shorter vowel sound. And just like I said, the breath is not released. So there is a difference in sound. They're not the same. So do note that they're not the same. To give you an example, another example, using like held T's as an example, a common one. If you see like Rachel's English uses this one a lot, like state versus stay, state versus stay. Okay, 8A, 8A. Okay. Okay. So this is just some notes on that. So state versus stay. So again, there are differences in meaning. So Beta says, check regularly on Youglish. Hey, we can do that together, I imagine. Am I going to get copyright flagged if I do that? I guess I can always edit it out later. Let's take a look at Youglish really quick, just to make sure there's no music. Let's check out Youglish. Take a field trip with me. Youglish. Check out regularly. For US. If you're not familiar with Youglish, Youglish is great as a pronunciation tool. It basically just you type in a word and it scours all of YouTube to find examples that use the word that you are searching for. So for instance, in this case, we're looking at regularly. Let's listen to this.
Here, we've done it by sending money regularly.
Regularly. That sounds similar to mine, I think. That's the next one.
Indigenous American people began regularly.
Regularly. I don't know, that to me sounds pretty similar.
Which is far back in time.
Oh, I missed it.
Who regularly.
Regularly. Yeah, so again, the strong R sound, regular before the L. Regularly. Okay. Oh, Lily asks, are you teaching another? I am streaming also on YouTube. So if you want to listen to what I'm listening to and see what I'm seeing, you can go to youtube.com/fluentamerican. Of course, if you prefer just chilling on Lang 8, that's cool. You can also get the feedback there. You just won't hear the original audio and things like that. But here, for instance, in this one, again, regularly, I think that sounds pretty similar.
Who regularly endure.
Regular.
Be an enabler if you find yourself regularly denying.
Regularly. You know, I don't know. Like, I feel like for the most part, these are sounding pretty similar to how I feel like I'm saying it. If you hear a difference, do let me know. It's a beta. Or if you find the specific ones that you heard and you're like, whoa, those sound really different to me, let me know. For me, I'm not personally hearing it right now, but maybe I can take a look later. Let's see. We have another question from Christian. Christian, thank you for checking us out today on stream. Oh no, it's a beta. Listen to the British. Oh no, it's different. Okay, going back to Christian's question. The natives pronounced the ed sound in the past. ED sounds. So we do have a video that talks about past tense endings with ED, okay? Because there are, you say you're a little bit confused sometimes. And the reality is because it can be confusing. Past tenses can be really confusing because there's more than one. I know it's the ED, it looks the same, but the reality is that there are multiple past tense endings that occur in English. There's really 3 different versions. That just to give a real quick summary for right now, the difference really is here's the video that you can check out later for the past tense endings, but it really depends on whatever the letter is that comes before, or whatever sound comes before the ed. Okay, so for instance, if the sound is like a T or something that's voiceless, like a T, like a T or a K or a S, like situations like that, then the ed is also going to be voiceless. So it's going to sound like a T, like for instance, like kissed or talked or walked. You know, in those cases, the ed will sound like a T. If the sound before the ed is voiced, then that means the ed will be voiced too. So for instance, like buzzed, buzzed, no, it's more D sound. Or robbed, again, more D sound, robbed. Or the situations like that. Lastly, if the ed comes right after a D or a T, then it's going to sound like an id. Okay, so for instance, like wanted or needed. Those are probably your most common examples there. Okay, so yeah, that's a great question, and I wish I had a simpler answer, but yeah, it really depends on the sound that's is coming before. All right, great questions. Lily asks, do you often stream? I at least have one stream a week. So the one stream is, again, usually it's on Saturdays, but I had something come up with my son, so I wasn't able to stream yesterday. But I am with you today. I would like to do more streaming in the future. It's really kind of just an issue of time. So there may be more streams, but usually it's streaming on Saturdays, 13:30, 1:30 p.m. New York time on Saturdays. Those the normal time for the stream. Okay. All right. So we have that resolved. We have that resolved. Great. All right. Let's continue listening to your files. And just to note, again, I have a video coming out in less than 30 minutes. Oh my God. It's going to be talking about placement and consonant sounds. And I think it's something that I've been wanting to make a video about for a very long time because it impacts all of my students. And I'm guessing it also impacts you if you're watching this. And you may not even know it. And it's talking about consonant sounds. And one quick thing you want to keep in mind with consonants, especially consonants that come out at the end of words, is you want to be paying attention to the placement there. Because what I'm seeing is a lot of my students just have really tense placement and really high placement. And even if you have great vowel sounds, if your placement's high in those situations, it really is going to impact your sound. So I hope you'll watch that video with me after the live stream is done in about less than 30 minutes. But I want to make sure we get through your audios first. So let's kind of blitz through our main ones here. Let's take a listen to this one.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Okay, thank you to Lilyco for the follow on. Let me play that again.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
I think your consonants are really they're kind of taking over your vowels.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
So I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely. Versus I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely. My biggest recommendation, just listening to this, would be reverse how you're kind of structuring your sentences or structuring your words. Because right now you're playing the consonants are taking up the most time, but you want the vowels to take up the most time. Okay, so hold your vowels for like an extra like half a second or so, and reduce your consonants. Make your consonants a little bit weaker. You want to get this more time to breathe.
I travel regularly.
I said travel, more travel. Travel, again, more ass on the cat.
I travel regularly.
Regularly. Notice that E sound at the end is just so fast. You just kind of flew through it.
Regularly.
Versus regularly. I travel regularly. Hold that vowel sound longer. Also, that S sound on regularly could also be longer too.
But I'd rather go rarely.
but I'd rather go rarely, but I'd rather go rarely, but I'd rather go rarely, but I'd rather go rarely. Your stressed words in particular. So, for instance, rather and regularly, you want to hold your vowels longer. Ra, re, ra, re. Rather go regularly. Rather go regularly. Okay. That really would be my biggest. I don't even want to kind of touch on like R sounds and things like that. I think that's my biggest suggestion here. It's gonna completely change how you sound. Just when you're speaking, just hold your vowel sounds longer. Because that's what people are listening for in English. If people have a hard time understanding you or make comments about your speech, most likely the issue is probably a vowel sound. Okay, that's my biggest suggestion there. Thank you so much for sharing that. I do appreciate it. Please send more. Okay, let's a quick check in on the stream. Okay. Oh, I hate to do this to you guys really quick. Someone just stopped by. Give me like 1 minute. I will be right back. I promise. Just give me 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Ugh, I apologize for that. Oh yeah, my mistake. But it looks like everything is okay, so that is a good thing. Okay, I'm seeing that we have how many audio files? I have 3 more that I see. Has anyone added more? Oh no, I got many, many more. So Beta, did you send me 2 audio files? That's fine. Let's try to run through these 3. Give me a moment and I will share my screen again. Let's check this out. Okay, taking a look at our next file here. I'm excited to hear Yuri's and Z's and Z2's. Okay, let's check out this one.
I travel regularly, but I rather go rarely.
I don't think, did we listen to this one already? I don't think we did.
I travel regularly, but I rather go rarely.
I love the buzz at the end. I'd rather go rarely. Buzz, buzz, it's done. Yay. I think the R sounds, again, are probably our big things. I'm kind of missing some of those L's. We'll play the beginning again.
I travel regularly.
Again, regularly. This S on a regularly is kind of tripping some people up. Some people are having a hard time with it. So it's not ra, ra. It's more re, re. Close your mouth more. Raise the back, middle, front of your tongue a little higher. Keep the placement low. So it's not ra. It's more re, regularly, regularly. If that's difficult for you, you're like, I just can't get this sound quite right. You could do some exercises, that we could do a lot in like our placement videos. So for instance, starting with a higher tensor placement and then trying to send the sound down. So instead of ra, more rest, like ah. See if we can do that, like ah. Once you get more comfortable with that, my recommendation is to then do it again and then repeat the vowel sounds, like so you're gonna and then you can start attaching some parts of the word that you have a hard time saying. So for instance, if we're trying to say regularly, it's like regularly. Kind of just doing progressions like that can be helpful with just trying to get the placement correct. Khaled, I see your question in Lang 8. Give me a moment.
I travel regularly.
Again, regularly, that L sound kind of just got swallowed up by the R. Be careful. The R is a monster. It wants to eat everything. Don't let it eat your consonants.
Travel regularly, but I'd rather go.
Rather. I'm not getting the TH. Again, they got chewed up by the R's.
Rather go.
Rare versus rather. You need the TH because, again, it gives you, that's what gives your word structure in a backbone. Rather.
But I'd rather go rarely.
And then rarely, the second R is kind of disappeared. Rarely.
Go rarely.
It's like rarely versus rarely. Okay, so again, trying to just maintain that R sound there. Okay. So those are my big things. Don't let the R's take over. Watch out for some of your placements on some of your vowel sounds there. Okay. I'd rather go rarely.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Okay. Yes, those would be my big comments there. Thank you so much for sending this audio file. If you have other questions about it, be sure to let me know in the future, in the comments, or send me a message. Just want to check and see if there are questions I have missed. Okay. Okay. Denny, I don't think I've actually gotten yours yet. Hang on. I've kind of switched the order. Okay. So I do think it's coming up. Although maybe I don't think I did it, but maybe I did. The caught merger. Yes, someone asked, are you the one who did you? I remember seeing a question about this in the document. Are you the one that asked? Talk about that in a moment. Colin asks really quick about the word close. Hello, Sofa. Okay, that's great. Okay. Close. So close, honestly, is going to have the same pronunciation as close, the verb. Like close the door. Close. I wear clothes. Okay. So that THES, because English is fun, it's just going to take on like a Z sound. So instead of clothes, it's a little hard to say. It's just going to become clothes. Like put on your clothes. Okay. We need to go. Yeah, so close. Hopes that answers that. Okay, going back to our question here about the caught merger. To use or not to use, is that the question? Yes, with the Z sound. Yes, with the Z. Yeah. All right. Lily, thank you so much for stopping by the stream on Lang A. I really do appreciate that. I hope to see you again in the future. So use or not to use, I think use it if you want. Don't use it if you don't want to. I don't know what to tell you. There's plenty of native speakers that do not make the aw sound. My wife does not make the aw sound. She says, for those who are not familiar with the caught merger or the Great Midwestern Vowel Shift, if you're not familiar with those things, to give you a quick example, how do you say these two words? Okay, for me, they're very different. The first one is hawk, like the bird. It's a type of bird, a bird of prey, is hawk. And the second one is hockey. Hockey with an ah sound. Okay, so again, hawk versus hockey. Ah, ah. The difference is that for the ah sound, the back of my tongue is high. For the ah sound, the back of my tongue is low. For me, they're very different. But for people who do the caught merger, for instance, my wife, she says hawk and hockey. Hawk, hockey. Whereas I would say, again, hawk, hockey. Hawk, hockey. She says hawk, hockey. It's really up to you. I think for a lot of my students, it would actually probably be a little easier for them to use the merger, to just pronounce everything as an ah, okay? Because honestly, for a lot of my students, that's kind of what they're doing already anyways. But the other thing too is that, the way people are in the US, like everyone's moved, lots of people, lots of families have moved from one part of the US to another within the last couple of decades. So you're kind of losing some of those accents, some of those regionalisms. They still exist, but not to the degree that they used to. So if you don't pronounce the ah sound, it's not really that big a deal. People probably won't even notice. I notice because I teach pronunciation. I think this stuff is fun. Well, a lot of people don't actually notice this stuff. I'll put it this way. There are no words out there that if you use an ah sound instead of an aw sound, people get confused. That doesn't happen. If you do that with like a long I and a short I, like if you say like sit versus seat, that changes everything, you know. But an ah sound versus an aw sound, there's no real word that changes everything for. Context is always going to make it very clear. So I think it really kind of just depends on yourself. I personally like the aw sound, but maybe that's just because, again, I grew up in Philadelphia on the East Coast of the United States, and we had it. So maybe that's why I'm more interested in it. But do what makes you happy. I would say that anyways. Always try to do what makes you happy. I think that's important. As long as it's not hurting people. Don't hurt people. That's your English lesson for today. Don't hurt people. Other quick questions. Danny, I'm trying to get to yours, man. Let's see. Home versus homework. Homework. What's the question here? Do they have different sounds? Hello to people who are just stopped in to the Lang 8 stream. So a question here. What about home versus homework? Homework. Homework. It's the same pronunciation. Homework. Homework. Notice that again for homework is that the stress is on home, you know, so work can be slightly reduced and said faster. Homework. But yes, those are going to have the same O sounds, so not really going to change. Tamerlan asks us about moths. Ooh, good question here. So that THS sound is really that could be a tricky combination. My suggestion is to make the TH sound clear first before moving to the S. I also have a video that talks more about, very specifically about those situations when you have a THS sound. I'm going to post that in a moment, but in case you want some more practice. But some real quick tips for THS. Kind of like what we talked about earlier with TH, you know, you don't want your tongue in between your teeth because that's going to make transitions really hard. Instead, you just want really light contact with your top tooth. So just very, very lightly, just press very lightly with your tongue against your top front tooth. Don't block the air completely. Air should always be able to move around your tongue. You don't want your tongue blocking it. You'll know that your tongue's blocking it if you make like a t, t or a d, d type sound. Okay. It's like th, th. That's the sound you're going for. Th. It's not t, it's not th. So it's not mot, and it's not mod, it's moth. Then, as soon as you get that TH sound clear, then you can slide your tongue up the back of your top front tooth into the S position. It's like th, th. If you find that difficult, that's the movement I would really recommend practicing. Just try to do that like 10 times, just like th, 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 th. Okay, really clear. Don't move to the S sound until the TH sound is clear. Okay. Then once you do that, you can add in the rest of the words like moths, moths, moths. The big issue I see with students is they're not holding the S sound long enough. Okay. But if you want some more practice with moths and some similar words to that, okay, there's a video I just posted in the chat box that you can check out for that THS sound. Okay. Or you can just go to the channel and search THS. And yes, same sound. Perfect. Okay, let's go back to audio files. Again, I have a video coming out in less than 15 minutes. Oh my gosh. I hope you guys will watch it with me. Let's listen though to your audio files. I'm going to try to wrap these up and answer last questions. Give me 1 second to share my screen and my audio again. Okay, we're back. Let's take a listen to this.
I travel regularly, but I rather go rarely.
Okay. Hello to Alex checking on the Lang 8 stream. Okay. I want to listen to this audio file one more time, then we'll go into some suggestions.
I travel regularly, but I rather go rarely.
Okay. I like that your stresses are very clear in this audio file. I can hear them very clearly. I would say that there may be a little bit overstressed again. Okay. Ed, I think this is you, and I think we've talked about this before.
I travel regularly.
Because I'm here. I travel regularly. Like I travel regularly. So one thing you can do to help.
I travel regularly.
Notice where you're at the end of travel. So when you say travel, you're like, I travel, vol. You're like down here, vol. And then you get to regularly, vol. regular. That pitch change is really dramatic. So instead of going up to, all the way up to like here, maybe just try to go to where you were when you said travel regular, travel re. Instead of travel re or travel regularly. Okay. Just by having a lower pitch that's followed by a higher pitch, that's going to indicate stress. It doesn't have to go crazy high. Okay. I travel regularly.
I travel regular.
I would also say take a look at what we've mentioned before about the S sound, regularly. I would definitely recommend taking a look at those. Okay. I travel regularly.
But I rather go rarely.
I want to hear that, but I'd rather.
But I rather.
It could be just the quality of the mic, but I feel like I'm not hearing that I like the held D.
But I rather.
Because I feel like I'm hearing, but I rather.
But I rather go.
It's a, but I'd rather. So you could shorten that vowel sound a little bit, and also hold the breath a little bit more strongly. Okay.
But I rather go rarely.
Also on rarely. I'd rather notice again where we're at for pitches.
Go rarely.
Go. So again on go, you're like down here. Go rare. Go rare versus go rare. Go rare. So your pitch change again doesn't have to be so dramatic on the stresses. Okay. I also think in terms of placement, you're still a little bit tense. Like I'm hearing like rare.
Go rare.
Rare.
Go rare.
Rare versus rare. Hear a difference between it? Go rarely. Instead of go rarely, more go rarely. So again, air. See if you can like drag it down with me. Air, ray. Just trying to practice getting that placement a little bit lower because it just sounds like a little bit too high. I do think it sounds a lot of your sounds like I do think that your throat is relaxed.
But I rather go rarely.
Like for instance, I like that rather.
But I rather.
Like rather, I think rather there sounds really good. I like your ass on there. Okay, so try and get to that same level of relaxation and things.
Go rarely.
Yeah, so those would be my big comments, especially with regards to stress. I think that would have the biggest impact right now. Don't overstress your pitches and your stressed words. Dude, don't have to go so high. That would be my big suggestion. Okay, thank you as always for sending out audio. Looking forward to hearing more. I had one more audio. Denny, is this you? Let's find out.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
I think so. Let me play again.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Where are the L's? You ate your L's.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Okay, let's go to that first part.
I travel.
I'd even say I feel like I'm hearing tra. I try to get a little bit more relaxed on the tra. Instead of I travel more. I travel.
I travel.
Because I'm travel versus travel. I travel.
I travel regularly.
Regular again, it's just slightly. I think just a little bit lower and a little bit more relaxed on regularly.
Travel regularly.
But the big thing is really that L. Regularly. Where's the L?
Regularly.
I
travel regularly.
Because I'm hearing regularly. It's almost the L's almost changed to like a W type sound. It's like regular versus regular. Okay, regularly.
But I'd rather go rarely.
But I'd rather go rarely.
Rarely.
I can hear the L a little bit more on the second one, but I would like it stronger. I'd rather go rarely.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
I like your stresses. I think the stresses are in good spots, and I think the amount you're stressing the words is pretty good. I think it sounds pretty natural. So my big suggestion is the L sounds, and also some of those vowels I think are just a little bit placement's a little bit high and could probably be slightly more relaxed. Okay. One more time on that. I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Oh, one last thing too on rarely, trying to hold the E sound. Ciao to Chiska. It just jumps in and immediately follows. That's what's up. Thanks for doing that on the Lang8 stream. How are you today? Hope you're doing well. Okay, I'm going to give you guys back your screen if you're following on the YouTube channel. Okay. Not seeing any questions or comments there. Great. Okay. Now we're going to be wrapping up the stream in just a couple of moments because, again, we have a video coming out that I think you guys are really going to enjoy. If things like placement interest you and you're trying to get more relaxed and sounding more natural in American English pronunciation, that is going to be key. I want to run through some last audio files that I was sent. So we're going to do kind of just a very blitzed version. You guys have already heard many different forms of feedback. Okay. And let me see. Okay. Give me 1 second. Oh, we got another song. Oh, great. So you guys are going to like this. Then any comments about, oh, there's this falsetto. Oh my gosh, who does this all the time? Okay. Someone sent me an audio file that's also very long. I don't think I'm going to have time to get through it today. This thing's like 40 seconds. As I'm listening to it right now. I'll try to get some real quick pronunciation feedback on that one. But yeah, this is going to be all the audio files. Okay. Also, by the way, if you sent an audio file, hey, Mr. Go Big, great to see you. If you send an audio file, be sure to save the link that we've used because for our next live stream, it will be the same link in case you want to input your audio file. Denny, I definitely feel like you're improving. You're definitely on the right track. Continue practicing with that placement stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think you're doing all the right things. Yeah. Overstressing is my curse. And being dramatic, Ed. Come on, Ed. It's okay. Just tone it down a little bit. That's all. Just tone it down. You know, again, pitch is like a staircase. Don't make the steps too high from each other. Okay. All right. Blitz version. Let's go. Come on. We're going to get through as many of these audio files really quick as we can. Let's do. Hold off on that one. Hold off on. Okay, we got some. Let's do 6-second ones first. So in just terms of stress here. Oh, what I didn't even share my audio. Oh my gosh. What am I doing? Going crazy. Okay.
I travel regularly.
Okay, I would say regularly. Try to get the last L stronger. Regularly.
Travel regularly.
Because I'm hearing regularly, but it's regularly. Don't forget that last R. Maybe that's that British thing you heard.
Regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
And again, that rarely. I like that last L to be stronger. I think you hit all the right stresses, but I think you put the heaviest stress on a word I probably wouldn't have. Like you put it more on rarely. I probably would put it more on regularly and rarely. You instead put it on the middle one. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but it does notice how it changes the rhythm. I would say I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely versus
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
Yeah, so I do think that I think regularly actually listen to that to get stressed. But I would probably stress more rarely than what was the other word? The other word is rarely. Okay, other 6-second one.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
I like this one more because I like that heavier stress on rarely at the end. I think that makes a lot more sense.
I travel regularly, but I'd rather go rarely.
And I think your L sounds were also a little bit clearer in this one as well.
I travel regularly.
I would still say regularly. I think that would be a good word to practice just with those R's and those L sounds. I would recommend that. Okay, 46-second man. Let me see. I'll let you guys listen to our song.
I travel regularly.
It's a falsetto. I think we hit the limit. Doesn't even sound like a word. It's, there's no even R's. It's just here, I have no comments for that. And guys, if you sent me this one, I appreciate it.
To visit planet Earth, you will have to be
Just quick note, Earth. Try to reduce that R sound a little bit.
born as a human child.
Born. Try to reduce that R a little bit. Born, a little lower placement.
At first,
Yeah, I think the video we have coming up actually again with the R sounds. The R sounds just sound really tense and high, like at first versus at first and things like that. But unfortunately, I had to rush through that one. Let me see, because of replacement videos. Oh, thank you so much, Denny. I appreciate that, man. Grazie mille, raga. Lo prezzo, davvero, lo prezzo. Let me see what I can do in the future. That's all I can say. All right, guys. Like I said, I have a video coming up. I really would appreciate you guys checking in. I will be there. In fact, I think it's streaming right now, so I should probably get over there. But if you have questions and things like that, take it over to our next video. I will see you there. Have a good day. Have a good night if I don't. And I hope to see you guys on our next live stream. Thank you so much for your time. I always appreciate it. You guys take care.